Boardroom Bound, Episode 79, The Secrets Behind High-Performing Boardroom, with Joanna Clark.
I would recommend any type of NED training just because you never know what's going to happen when you walk into that boardroom, and giving yourself all the preparation that you can is second to none.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Boardroom Bound. My name is Alexander Lowry, and this is the podcast dedicated to intentional leadership in the boardroom. My goal is to give new and aspiring directors the tips, tactics, and strategies necessary to transform your confidence and build a successful career as a board director. Quick reminder, you can get all of today's show notes at podcast.gordon.edu. And in today's episode, we will be speaking with Joanna Clark, who is the program coordinator for the Non-Executive Directors Program at the Financial Times in London. Her role within the program covers all workshop management, as well as being the main point of contact for all aspiring and current NED program members. And she's been a part of the FT London team for the last 3 years. So this is basically the person who manages the FT NED program, who makes it happen, who leads all the candidates through it, who works with all the faculty to deliver the right programs, someone who understands it well and can give us an overview of the program today. And I'm really excited for you to meet Joanna, to understand her program, because the FT is one of those names that carries so much weight in the industry. You think of it as the equivalent of a Wall Street Journal or the New York Times in terms of name recognition for a news organization. And they have an accredited board program. And the goal is to teach people probably what you've heard about other programs in terms of how you build the right materials. So your board document, which is your board resume, your bio, your LinkedIn profile, your brand. A big part of it is also building a built-in network of all of their graduates, and they've had over 850 in the last 8 years. Over 40% of them are sitting in board roles today. So they have a wonderful organizational opportunity just to plug people in and help them move forward, but also the information that they give, not only about understanding your role as a director and what you're stepping into, the dynamics and the subcommittees built into boards, the legal liabilities, but also the effective behaviors in the boardroom for yourself and the people that you'll be working with. It's a comprehensive program, and their diploma, which is what their graduates take, has one of those sort of feathers in the cap that allows your candidacy to be sticky as you go forward pursuing NED roles. So I'm excited for you to hear about what a program like this can offer you, not only the skills and the advancement opportunities, but so much for you to think about whether this is something you're planning to do tomorrow or a few years from now to become a non-executive director. This sort of program is what will help take you forward and propel you into that career opportunity. So let's jump into the show. Joanna Clark, delighted to have you today. Welcome to the Boardroom Bound podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for speaking to me.
And we were joking about this before we came on the air today about a mutual connection who brought us together. And I'm very excited to be talking about your program. The Financial Times is what you guys would just say NED coordinator program, that is your role for that coordinator. So the non-executive director for people in the U.S., a term around the world, especially outside the U.S., called NED. Here would be independent director. Some people just call it director on a board. Lots of different terms, but we will use NED today since that is the appropriate UK term. So wonderful place to start would probably a little bit of background to the FT's NED program. I know it's been around since 2011. You've had over 850 people who've already graduated through the program. Can you talk a bit about how it started, how it came about, and how it's been building?
So we, yes, as you said, we started in 2011. We have been actually quite steady since we started in 2011, sort of building a bit this year, and it's sort of gaining momentum. We have a course that we hold here in London, and we have courses that we hold in Hong Kong as well. Unfortunately, none in the US as yet.
Not yet.
We try to cover as much. Not yet. We try to cover as much of the globe as possible, and we're trying to develop as we go. We've got a couple of different offerings that we have specifically for non-executive directors, ranging from one-day workshops right up to our diploma program, which is a accredited qualification. So we are sort of going from strength to strength, and I think that we are definitely getting a lot more recognition. Those who have come and sat workshops with us are very nice to pass on many people that they know, including our mutual friend who put us in contact with each other.
Right.
So we're a very we're looking at a very specific area and a very specific area of training, but it is important and it is growing.
And just to help our audience understand it, so for some of them who are aspiring directors and they're thinking it could be tomorrow, it could be a year from now or 5 years from now, I'm preparing myself, I want to get ready. Accreditation in some ways is sort of another feather in your cap. It's a way of standing out and saying, I have learned what I need to do. Can you talk about what that feels like to your audience members, how they take that forward? Help us understand the weight that comes with that.
Sure. So when you're going up for a board role, as most of your listeners will probably know, you are up against a really difficult field. It's high level, it's high stakes, and there's a lot of people in this field who have maybe similar qualifications and experience that you do. I think it really does say to your prospective employer or the board that you'd be applying for that not only are you taking this step seriously, that you have gone to great lengths yourself to really prepare yourself, because maybe you have the experience, maybe you have the know-how and the qualifications to really impact that board and make a difference. But if you've never been in that boardroom scenario before, really, you are at a disadvantage, and you might not know exactly what is needed from you in the job. Particularly with our diploma program, we cover every aspect that you would normally encounter on a board. Of course, these things, we try to go through as many peculiar role plays of what could possibly happen on a board as we can. But it really does send people away feeling far more confident and far more assured that when they step into a boardroom that they will succeed and that they will be effective.
And it's interesting. I would like to pull this apart into different elements. So part of it is not only acquiring the skill sets, but having the confidence that you have the skill sets, you know how to apply them, but also from the external viewership perspective of making yourself a sort of a sticky candidate. So I imagine there's a board slate of 5 people that go up and they all fit the job description. They're all going to have the right background. How do you stand out against your peers? One way is saying, look, I've spent time and energy and money and qualifications, because otherwise you have that age-old dilemma. How do you get a job without experience? How do you get experience without a job?
Exactly. No, that's completely right. And I think, particularly with the diploma, it is a 6-month course. You are putting a decent level of effort into this, not too dissimilar from looking at an MBA or executive MBA. So you are definitely, it's a feather in your cap that's second to none, really.
And of course, the Financial Times name resonates certainly across Europe and Asia in ways that, for example, if the Wall Street Journal had an equivalent here, help us understand not just going to a program, but you're going to someplace with that sort of name behind it. I'm sure you've heard that from your people who've graduated and have gone on to jobs that this has stood out. Can you help us understand if someone was thinking about, I could take training from someone who's been there and been a director before versus going to a program like this that's accredited and has a reputation? Help us understand that.
We're very lucky, really, to have this, to have the brand recognition that we do with the Financial Times, and that we already have a high level of, I think, industry respect, of course, that the FT is known for, that the service and the quality of the product that we already provide that is well known is very, very high. So when it comes to all of our programs, our events, which are really growing across the company, are taken seriously. Yeah.
And I imagine for someone, they would hear that, okay, that's great, I've got that behind me. Also probably wrapping their head around what would the program do for me and how it would work. Because in many ways, if you're an aspiring director, you've probably in the C-suite already, or perhaps getting to that next level, so you're preparing for life beyond that for the boardroom. Can you break down in a simple way, what are the sort of different skill sets and experiences and learnings that they come out of this program with?
So I don't think it's well known enough just how different a skill set it is to be a non-exec director on a board to being an executive. What we here really like to focus on. We do it in our 2-day program, the Effective Non-Executive Director, and within the diploma. But what we think really sets our program apart is that we focus on boardroom behaviors significantly, a lot about boardroom dynamics, because there are as many types of boards as boards out there, because it's all down to personal interaction, it's all down to how you deal with people, and how a group of people can interact to put into practice the corporate governance that we all aspire to and aim to. So a lot of this is saying, okay, so this is how you worked as an executive. You would walk into a boardroom with your exec hat on. We're wanting you to take that hat off and put a completely different one on. To really learn the difference between sort of being an active member of the board and being more of an observer, to listen and watch how people interact, how they present to the board. What are they? I mean, you can hear the words that they're saying, but what are they really meaning? You've been brought into a board for a purpose, and that purpose is to make sure that board is doing what it's supposed to be doing. You are not then going away and having an executive role. You're not looking at the maybe very finer details, but you need to be able to acquaint yourself with a board from the top down, looking at everything, looking at the whole picture, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of just sort of getting your head around it, getting your head around the difference and what is required of you now as a non-executive director rather than an executive.
And I think it's so simple to say it out loud, but to actually execute in a different way is hard, because your whole career is built on execution, getting things done, being effective, eventually growing, being a leader of people and helping other people do it. And then you're transitioning to the NED role, and it's sort of, as you said, to me, it's more dramatic than just take the head off. It's like a whole nother, almost over a Chinese wall of now your fingers out, noses in. What does that look like? How are you coaching and guiding others?
One could say that it's a new personality in total. What we do is we really try, and most people say that this is the part of the course that they love the most. Okay. And about 5% of people say they cannot stand it because we sort of break you down a little bit and say, what really are your skills? What are your skills? How did you use them in your executive role, and how can you then use them in a different way in more of an independent role, looking at from the outside? And it does make you analyze yourself, which I think most execs would not have done for quite a long time. And it's refreshing, I think, for quite a lot of people. And I mean, this is why people going into non-execs in the first place. It's because you do want a difference. You do want a change in your career. You don't want to retire completely, but you've been maybe working in one industry and going along one path for a long time now, and now you want to change. And I think this helps you get going. This helps you get started and say, this is a completely different thing for me, and it's a new challenge. It's a completely new challenge.
So do you think people usually find this program because they're aware that I need to be different in the next role, or they're coming perhaps because of the networking, which we also understand is super important? And I imagine if everyone in the room is thinking, I want a board role, this is a smart way to do it. What is the driver?
Absolutely. I would say that it varies, all of what you mentioned. So we either have people who have never done a NED role. We have people who have been just appointed a board role, have given it 10 seconds thought and thought, oh my Lord, I can't manage this. This is something I've never trained for. I need help. I need to really sort of put the work in and really think about what this is going to entail for me. People are thinking much more about your personal liability as well. Boards are under sort of increasing scrutiny and increasing pressure for many different reasons, and one of the things that's gone up is people's awareness of you might have financial liability involved in that, but you might also have your professional reputation. So people come to us because they want this backup. They want to know that they have done everything in their power to make sure that they are as effective as they can be and that they will make the right decisions in difficult moments.
It's interesting you say that, thinking about, let's take the reputational risk for a second. I think we can all imagine the financial risk, which is why you're going to have the D&O insurance just to make sure you're covered. But reputational risk is key.
Exactly.
We've talked about on some previous episodes here that I encourage people to have an abundance mentality, right? If you've been charging down this path, you really want a NED role, you get your first offer, you're thinking, great, I'll take it. And I would say, whoa, 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 whoa. You want to make sure that's the right NED role so that you can be successful in it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you've had a history of being a successful, say, C-suite executive and you delivered, you don't want to, quote unquote, fail or stumble in your first NED role.
No.
How do you coach people through that? I'm sure that's part of the program.
Well, we actually have someone who comes in who really looks at this and sort of says to our groups, you know that this is the route that you want to go down. That's great. You know that you want a NED role or something in this variety. It might be, say it's something similar. Maybe it's a trustee role, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But anything like that, you need to know that what they are looking for is very specific, and the skills and experience that you have is a very specific niche. There's no point in trying to make yourself seem like you could do any role out there,
right.
Because there's nothing that a headhunter or a recruiter will pick up on. That's if it goes through recruiters, which, as we know, most of them don't. But
mm-hmm.
when particularly if you're looking at a CV, a NED CV is different to an exec CV. You need to be putting out exactly what you want because you need the role that's right for you. When you're taking this on, as we said, because of liability, because of many things, you want this to be something that you get something from person and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new role, a completely different part of your life that you're going into in your professional life. So you need to know exactly what you're looking for, rather than just going, oh, I fancy a NED role now. Let's see what's out there. Many people come from a very specific background and fit perfectly into this fantastic NED role that suits them, and they're the ones who are going to be the most effective.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give you an example, Alexander, just say you've been working in the private sector your whole life. You're thinking, what I really want to do now is give back a little bit more and go
mm-hmm.
into the public sector.
Right.
They always think it's fantastic that when you bring in private sector independent directors, just because they will look at this with completely fresh eyes.
Sure.
I would say vice versa, but public sectors are absolutely terrified of going into the private sector. It's not too bad. Don't worry, everyone. The private sector is not as scary as it looks. But say you've been in the industry for a long time, but that industry has changed a lot with digital transformation. All the sort of the changes we're seeing to companies coming in now. If you've been doing this for the last 40 years, you've seen an enormous amount of change,
mm-hmm.
and it might be fantastic for you to step into a startup and say, okay, you guys know exactly what you're talking about, but I've got a lot of experience in this industry, and I can take this forward. So there's no point in even taking the first step in this transition without thinking, this is really why I'm doing this and what I'm wanting from this role.
And I think that makes absolute sense. So if you have, for example, I would summarize that if you find an organization that your values are aligned with, that you're passionate about, that just takes it to another level. And you will do so much better, which of course will build on your reputation and open up other opportunities in the future. So I imagine you're trying to unlock that for people, tying back to what you talked about, their skill sets of where you are really a good fit on multiple different dimensions, right?
And there's another thing that I'm sure most experienced portfolio NEDs will tell you. If it's advertised as 4 days a month, it will mean 8 days a month. So if you're already not sure that you want to spend the amount of time required, remember that it'll always be more than advertised. You need to know that you care about this company that you're going into, either for whatever reason you choose, because it's hard work, and if you're not spending that amount of time, then you're not being effective. Not really.
And that's aside from the random events that might pop up of a CEO succession that wasn't expected, or liability, or merger and acquisition, whatever it might be. So I'm with you, right? It is a strong commitment you need to make. And
we've seen enough of those over the last couple of years.
Oh, sure. And then I imagine that's part of the program. It's sort of a gut check of the reality of what you're actually trying to step into.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course.
And you were talking about a little bit before. This is, I'm sure, a common part of the let's just call the logistical steps people have to work through of how do you present yourself? Because as you said before, it's a very different CV. The resume is not the same as you're taking for a CEO role as for a board role. So that is, let's tie it to a larger brand perspective. So you've got your board doc, your board resume version, LinkedIn profile is a very common thing, and there's some other related materials, your bio, etc. How do you advise people to begin, if they're thinking at a bigger level to talk about their branding, to change that? LinkedIn is probably an easy way to take that example, right? So someone is currently CEO of XYZ organization, and now they want to be NED of ABC company. And how do they begin to position it? How do you recommend that they begin to sort of share that message with others, get the word out there, literally begin to change some of their story on LinkedIn? How does that process work?
Well, it can be a very tricky process, and I don't claim to be an expert, but if you are CEO of XYZ, you may not want the whole world knowing that you're looking to be a NED of ABC. This can take a little bit of craftiness on your part to sort of to put the feelers out and see what's out there. Maybe if you choose through executive search, or I think the best one is through personal networking, because you're not wanting to. Yes, you may not want to be advertising this. This is something that we cover, but I wouldn't claim to be the absolute expert to give that sort of knowledge to your listeners, I'm afraid, Alexander.
Well, in terms of the networking, right, I'm sure that's probably a big driver for why some of the people are coming. And I know you will not only talk about the importance of the network, but you bring a network together for people even after they've graduated. I'm sure you're keeping them together. Perhaps you could give us a little bit of an elevator pitch about all of that.
Of course. So the FTNED program is it's a quite well-rounded service for anyone who does either our diploma or any one of our workshops, whether they be just one or two or even half-day events. You get added to our community, which is the NED Club. What we have there is quarterly networking events that are held here at the FT, which we've now moved into our shiny new building just across from St Paul's Cathedral in London.
Lovely.
So it's very nice now. But we do our absolute best to keep offering our graduates and those who've joined the club and belong to our workshops opportunities to meet new people, maybe to speak with headhunters, to speak with recruiters just about sort of what sort of things they're looking for, and to ask advice. We always have a topic. We'll have a speaker come in. For example, the last one we had was the Cabinet Office came in and was talking to us specifically about public appointments. They actually had to come in the night that we had a Brexit vote. So they came in, spoke, and then ran from the building back to Westminster. So that was a bit of an interesting one. But we tried to cover a lot of different topics, because we've got lots of different people from different industries interested in different things. So we try to do this as much as possible. We have a site exec appointments, which we host NED roles on as well. So we try and keep everyone abreast of any roles that we have coming in, and to keep them in contact with each other, because they can do more really than we can just by keeping up these relationships with their peers. I think people do ask us, they come to us and say, how can you get us a NED role? I think it is not our or any other training company's power, unfortunately, to provide you with a role, but we will give you all the tools you need to succeed when you get there.
Although, speaking of that, you've had some fairly good success. Is that something you're able to tell us about publicly, if you want to give a little bit of a humble brag about that?
Yeah, we can give a bit of a humble sure. So with our diploma, I would say it can sometimes take a couple of years, because people normally come to us in advance of making the move to a NED role. So maybe they will start looking a year or 2 years after they've completed the course with us. But we have at least 44% of our graduates have obtained NED roles after completing the diploma, and 41% are currently in a NED role. So, I mean, that's fantastic. We have lots of people who come to us very early. We have some people who come to us a little bit late. but the fact that we've got pushing half of our graduates currently in a NED role, we think is fantastic.
And of course, that ties back to the networking of now you have more people in more board roles to do more networking for the program. So I'm sure it just builds upon itself, that snowball rolling downhill.
Exactly. I mean, I'd say the vast majority of those who come to us are looking for a portfolio career. I have seen quite a lot about sort of issues of overboarding in the news recently, but I think that most people are looking for, say, 2 to 3 NED roles or trustee roles, independent roles, paid or non-paid, maybe a little bit of a mixture between the two. And our average is that we have for our alumni is 2 NED roles at present. So, I mean, the more we have, the more people we have coming through. So we have 45 candidates per cohort that starts. That's 4 times a year. And we're very lucky to the point that we just sold out our September cohort today, which is fantastic. It's really showing that more emphasis is being put on this level of training, and that the word is getting out there.
That is great. And I imagine, based on this conversation today, and you can tell me if this is correct, I'll use the word differentiators, but one of the things that perhaps sets you apart is the boardroom effectiveness training, right? So the behavior training that goes on. There are other programs out there where they'll talk about how you build the board doc resume, the bio, update your LinkedIn profile. But I feel like this is beginning to take it to another level. I'm sure you do some case study work to help people work it through. Do you feel like that is something that is clearly what sets this apart and perhaps why it's in such high demand?
I believe so. I think we have been. We have been working hard to provide a good quality qualification and service and training for those who have come through our program so far, and they have passed on the word, and this, we're seeing the fruit of that now, which is brilliant. I would say that we are quite a unique. I hate to say quite unique. We are a unique offering in the fact that we do focus on the NED director. So I think there is quite a lot of boardroom effectiveness, boardroom training that is out there that comes from different sort of styles and different companies. But we do really have that focus. We do focus on the boardroom dynamics, and I think it's one of, well, we believe it's the most important thing that you can take away from the course, really, and take into a boardroom. And we have some really fantastic faculty. I've got to say, before I can't leave out the brilliant workshop leaders we have. The final real selling point that I believe that we have is our faculty, who they really do bring quite an amazing combination of real-world experience with teaching experience, coming from. So our main workshop leader, Murray Steele, has many years of MBA teaching in Cranfield Business School that we have here in the UK, and many NED roles and boardroom stories that he likes to share with everyone at length. But no, there's some really fantastic people and some great industry leaders that we come into, whether that's coming from legal, whether we bring in committee chairs or headhunters, we try and bring in the best people to pass on their knowledge.
And I imagine the only downside for some people listening to this is that might not be based in the UK or over near Hong Kong for your other offices. And I'm sure that there's no online version of this, right? It's in-person delivery. We are in the throes of developing an online version, because the diploma is it's a blended course. So we have 4 days where you need to be here in London, and the rest of it all of the course content is provided online. So we do have quite an international cohort. Well, I think they're getting more international as we go, really. Quite a lot from Europe. We have, every now and again, we'll have a American Canadian come and join us. But it is definitely possible, and we are looking to transform this into at least to give the option of an online course, for particularly those in the US. Well, there is a burgeoning market for it here, and I imagine the Financial Times reputation is continuing to grow and develop, and I think that would be well received.
No, keep your ear to the ground, and we will let you know when that's ready to fly.
Well, we will be able to share that good news on a future episode when you bring it down here, and we can
Absolutely
help our audience understand it. 'Cause it sounds like we've talked about other ways that people can acquire some of the skill sets and those accreditations, and this sounds like one that has great success, a good history behind it, and the right people involved. So it was wonderful hearing about the explanation for how it started, how it's grown, and how it's developed. And I wonder, Joanna, whether you have any parting advice for a new or aspiring board member.
Ooh, a new or aspiring board member. Remember to network. No, there are many things that you can take on board, and even if our course is not one of the things that you're able to take on, I would recommend any type of NED training, just because you never know what's going to happen when you walk into that boardroom, and giving yourself all the preparation that you can is second to none. It really will make you a better independent director as soon as you walk into that room. So preparation is key, and keep those business cards, and you'll get there in the end.
Well, we were delighted to have you on the show today, Joanna. Thank you for sharing your insights and helping all of us to become more boardroom bound. And I imagine there's some people that would say, I would love to know more about this program or to connect in different ways. What would be the right way for them to follow what you guys are doing?
No problem. So we have all of our workshops, dates, and the information about the course is available on our website, which is non-execs.ft.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We're FT NED Diploma Program, and also on Twitter we are at FT_NED.
Delighted to have some time with you today and learn about how your program is growing and being very successful in helping people find those board roles, which is the whole point for it. So thank you for helping being part of everyone on listening to this episode today and in the future to become more boardroom bound.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode of Boardroom Bound. I loved chatting with Joanna Clark of the Financial Times' Non-Executive Director program. And this is a diploma that graduates take out there that shows not only have they learned the right skill set and prepared the right materials, they built a tremendous network. It's a great way to jumpstart your career opportunity as a non-executive director. This is something that people who are planning several years down the line to position themselves for are well placed to do. This sort of program will propel you forward in taking the right steps in an effective way. But at the same point, if you're a brand new board director and you're realizing I might have stepped into something that's going to be a lot harder than I thought it was, this program would also help you become much more successful very quickly. And there are people that are looking to properly transition from a single board director role to become a portfolio, to become a career specialist in it. All of those people benefit from an accreditation program like this, especially with a strong reputation like the Financial Times. Now remember to head over to podcast.gordon.edu, where you can get all the links that we talked about in today's resources, including some material provided by the Financial Times NED program, which will give you a sense of what they offer and the value they add. Now, if you enjoyed this episode or any other episode of the podcast, I would love it if you would open iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or whatever you're listening to this podcast on and take just 30 seconds to leave a rating and review. This helps us spread word about the show, and I'd also encourage you to stay subscribed and tune in, because every week we're working hard to give you top quality content to advance your board career. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the show. I can't wait to share more stories and strategies from brilliant business minds with you again next week. Remember to keep tuning in to be Boardroom Bound.